Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll be covering from a legendary tournament that is the Sinquefield Cup 2014, where Fabiano Caruana had the greatest ever performance in a single tournament ever. He had a rating performance of 3098, and that's almost 3100. That is absolutely incredible, and he finished with 8.5 out of 10. It is, in modern times, it can be compared to Magnus Carlsen's performance in Nanjing Spring event of 2009, I believe. Where he also had a really impressive performance over 3000, and of course the Anatoly Karpov's performance in the Linares tournament of 1994, where he finished full 2.5 points ahead of Garry Kasparov and Alexei Shirov, I believe. And there were other great performances, but those are considered the top three in modern times, and sometimes it is even compared to Bobby Fischer's legendary winning streak of 20 games in a row from the Palma de America Interzonal and the Candidates matches of 1971. Now, if you remember when we were covering the Bobby Fischer saga, Bobby won the last 7 games of the Palma de America Interzonal. He didn't actually win the final one against Oscar Pano. He just played C4, and Pano resigned. Now, I don't know if that game was counted rating-wise or not, because if you actually, I think if you don't, even in those days, if you didn't appear for a game, you did lose the game, but maybe not the rating point. So I'm not sure about that. But it is counted when talking about Bobby Fischer's legendary streak. So those 7 games are counted. Then his match, his first candidate's match against Mark Taimanov, against Bent Larsen, where he defeated Bent 6-0, and then he defeated Mark Taimanov 6-0. So that's 7 plus 6 plus 6, that's 19. And also after drawing 2 games in his third match against former world champion Tigran Petrosyan, he won the third one, and that makes it 20 wins, and that's considered the winning streak. Let me just check real quickly if it's. I don't really remember if it's. I don't want to trick you guys because it does sound weird if no, yeah, Fischer actually won the first one and lost the second one. Yeah, and the first 2 did not end in a draw. So it was actually a streak of 20 consecutive wins. Even I made a mistake there. And then he lost the second game to Petrosyan, effectively ending the streak. So you could argue that, okay, today in modern times it's much harder to play against Veselin Topalov in 2014 than it is against former world champion Tigran Petrosyan, or against Bent Larsen, or against Mark Taimanov, or against any of the players that Fischer played in the Palma de America Interzonal, because players just play much more precise chess nowadays. But okay, they have access to engines. Fabi also has access to engines, and well, it's equal footing. And then once the engine theory is depleted, you are again left with yourself, as you would be in 1971 or 1970 when Fischer played against his opponents. That none of them had access to engines, and it was. Once you've depleted the known theory, it was, every man for himself. So you could argue that it's harder to play against Topalov or against some of the players that Fabi faced here, but that's not the reason why we are making this video. If, for example, you really wanted to go into detail, Fischer, when he defeated Mark Taimanov with a score of 6-0, Taimanov defeated basically every player that was active in those days, and he could beat anyone. He even drew against Fischer, I believe, and he defeated Anatoly Karpov. I mean, those are. It's not as if Fischer just went for a nice walk in the park. Those are really scary names that he faced. And okay, but those are the 2 that are compared. But with 50 years apart, it's very hard to actually say which is better, which is harder. But that's like comparing. Football players now, like Ronaldo, or I don't know who's popular now, to someone maybe 50 years ago, to Maradona or Pele. Okay, you could say it's not so easily comparable, as football players don't have access to engines which make their play more precise, but they do have access to the statistics, the computers, that their coaches who use such tools to make them better players. So of course they are more precise, they are more technical, and you cannot compare them, but you can compare how maybe in those days a player would fare against players of similar strength, which is kind of what we are doing here. But yeah, okay, I'm now going in the wrong direction a little bit, but I hope you understand what I'm talking about. And as usual, I'm always more than eager to hear your opinion in the comment section below. But that's not why I'm making the series. I'm making it to see how Fabiano played in this incredible run when, as you can see, in 2014, Fabi was already rated over 2800, and he started by winning 7 games, and then it took Magnus Carlsen in game 9 to end the streak, and that game ended in a draw. So basically, Fabi won 7 games in a row, and then he drew the final 3, making it 8.5 out of 10, and making it the greatest tournament performance ever in a single tournament. So let's check it out. This is his round 1 game against Veselin Topalov. Topalov has the white pieces, and he opens with knight to f3. It's a reti opening. We have knight to f6 by Fabi, and now pawn to c4. Okay, transposing into the English, we have pawn to c5 and knight to c3. We have knight to c6. The 4 knights of the English are on the board, and pawn to g3. Now going into the fully symmetrical g6 is still the most popular continuation. Fabi goes pawn to d5. We have c captures, knight captures, and now bishop to g2. We have knight to c7. Again, even by today's standards, the most popular, avoiding any unnecessary trades. We have castles, pawn to e5, and now pawn to a3. d3 is the most popular today, even in 2014 it was. a3, and now rook to b8. Preparing pawn to b5, we have pawn to d3, and bishop to e7 first. We have bishop to e3. Again, putting the bishop in front of your e2 pawn, but this was also very well known at the time. Castles, we have rook to c1, all theoretical moves, bishop to d7, knight to d2, and now knight to d4. We have knight to c4, putting pressure on the e5 pawn, and pawn to f6, weakening your king side a little bit, but even this was theory at the time. And now pawn to f4. And okay, there are some games that reach this position where pawn to b5 was played, let's say b5, knight to a5, and then you go something like bishop to e8, where you have control over c6, and you have to have control if you don't want to allow knight to c6. But here, after f4, e captures on f4 was played by Fabi, and it is now, as of move 14, interestingly, as this was played in 2014, that this position has never been repeated again. So let's check it out. Bishop captures on f4, okay, nicely pinning the knight, and now knight goes back to e6. Putting pressure on the bishop. Veselin goes back, bishop to d2, and now pawn to b6. We have pawn to g4, stopping pawn to f5, and bishop to e8. Now the bishop can be rerouted to f7 if needed, if for example, knight to d5, bishop to d5, if white grabs control over the d5 square, but also you can go to g6, you also control h5, so it's a nice square for the bishop. We have bishop to e1, and pawn to b5. Fabi chases away the knight, we have knight to e3, and bishop to d6. Okay, makes sense. And now knight c to d5. So how do you continue here? Well, best would be to not go knight to d5 at all. For Topalov, best would be to play knight to e4, just put pressure on that dark square bishop. But after knight to d5, he allows Fabi to go for knight captures on d5, bishop captures, and now bishop to f7. Okay, it looks like nothing is really happening here, but wait a few moves. We have knight to f5, going after the bishop, bishop to e5, and now queen to d2. And it's hard to realize why Veselin went into this, because there's just no reason to play this position. The knight to e4 variation that we've discussed, not variation, but the knight to e4 move made a lot more sense. We have knight to d4 by Fabi, and now bishop captures on f7 with check, rook captures, and rook to d1. We have knight captures on f5, g captures on f5, and queen to d4 with check. We have bishop to f2, blocking, and queen to g4 check. We have king to h1 and pawn to c4. So I imagine the reason why it was played is that Topalov saw all of the moves up until this point, but after queen to c2, he missed Fabi's next move, and Fabi's next move is deadly. It allows Fabi to win the game completely without white having, well, you do have some counterplay, but not really. So feel free to pause the video and try to find the only move that wins the game for Fabi, and the most likely the one that Veselin missed here, while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this incredible maneuver. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook to e8. That is the key move, and I'm gonna discuss why. But first, let's just check why not just queen h5 right away, as I'm sure that was the move that a lot of you guys were looking for. Looking at, because bishop g1 defends the pawn, and now if you go rook to e8, now just pawn to e4, and there's no clear way on how to continue here with black. There is the possibility of capturing on f5. You can do this, and after bishop captures, and okay, the rook now attacks the queen, you will play c captures on d3. Let's say e captures queen to c8. You can offer a queen trade, and even if a queen trade occurs, like captures, and bishop to and pawn to d4, attacking the bishop, so avoiding bishop captures on b2, you will first capture on h2, and only then will you capture the bishop on a7. And if bishop to c5, then you just bring the bishop back, and you have an extra pawn, so you're gonna probably win this. Maybe you won't, but you know, it is a much better position. You're going to be pushing for a win, but there is a much better one, and that is rook to e8. And now we are going to discuss why it is so much better. How do you defend? Rook captures on e2 is obviously the threat, but when is it the threat? So what can you do here? Now queen captures on f5 is much scarier, and if you play something like d captures on c4, which you of course want to do, then queen to h5, and now the same idea of bishop to g1 no longer applies, because now bishop captures on h2, and the rook on e8 is looking extremely scary. If bishop captures, rook captures on e2, attacks the queen, and once you move, you're gonna get checkmated on h2, or rather, you have to give up the queen, and that's game. So after queen to h5, pawn to h4 was played. It is by far the best move by Veselin, but an insufficient one. Queen to g4, going after queen to h3 check, followed by queen to h2 checkmate, and there is nothing Veselin can do to avoid this. Queen to d3, sorry, not queen to c3, queen to d3 was played, stopping queen to h3 with check, but now b captures on c4, and this b captures on c4 is what the combination was all about. Now the queen cannot remain here. All of the squares are covered. You can see that the bishop covers this, and the queen just has no squares. Okay, queen to e3 can be played, but I mean, very quickly, something like rook b7, rook to b3, and you're gonna resign after that. So, or some other moves like queen to e3, as it was played in the game. Rook to b7 was not played, but Fabi just played rook f to e7, and now there's really nothing you can do here. What can be done? Pawn to b3 was attempted by Veselin. Fabi just played bishop to b2, and he was in this position on move 34 that Veselin Topalov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The queen is hanging. Once you move the queen, well, if you move the queen to a really weird square, then even something like a bishop back, but just rook captures on e2, that's really the idea. And even if you trade queens, which is possible, the resulting position is so bad that it's completely unplayable. c3, c2, you have c1 covered. Even if you try something like rook b1, just bishop captures on a3, for example, rook to a1 attacks the bishop, bishop b4, and bishop captures on a7, c2. And okay, we could even try some more moves like bishop to d4, stopping bishop to c3, rook to e2, and now you just double up on the second rank. For example, pawn to h5, we're going to play rook to d8, attack the bishop. Once the bishop moves anywhere, really, you're going to double up here. Now you're threatening checkmate, rook h2 followed by rook to g2 checkmate, and after something like bishop to g1, stopping that, you will play pawn to h6, and after a check, or you don't even have to give the check, doesn't really matter, there's nothing you can do. Rook to c8, now rook to d5, and that's pretty much it. In situations like these, you have to be careful not to blunder your game with something like rook to d1. You're probably thinking, okay, we're attacking the rook. If rook captures, we bring a queen into the game, but the rook captures on c2, and all of a sudden, both of your rooks are hanging. Okay, you're still better, of course, something like rook captures on f1, rook captures on e2, and you still have the passed b pawn, but you will have to work very hard for your meal if it is even possible to win this. But after something like rook to d5, now You can even block with rook to c5. You can just collect rook captures on f5, rook captures on h5. There is no move that white can make here to even make the game interesting. So that's the reason why after bishop to b2, Veselin resigned, and of course he saw that there's no point in continuing this. But yeah, you had to see all of this and that beautiful captures on c4 idea at the moment that queen to c2 was played, and you know, rook to e2 had to be spotted. Veselin missed it, Fabi didn't, and yeah, we didn't have the clock time, so yeah, queen c2 played fairly quickly, but yeah, there's no good move here. There's only you know, maybe a slightly better one. Maybe bishop to g1 maybe is a bit more resilient, but there was nothing to even try here. Fabi even spent, as you can see, some 10 minutes on this rook move. Well, he probably had it prepared, of course, in the previous moves, but yeah, he still wanted to make sure, as he was the only winning idea. So that's, you know, when you see a strong player, you know, take his time, when there's the only winning idea, you know that that's the one that he's calculating. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. The first game that we are covering from the legendary Sinquefield Cup of 2014, Fabi's legendary run. And then, well, I might not show all the games, but I will definitely show all the interesting ones. And I imagine all of them are interesting, so chances are I will be showing all of them. And we might finish just in time for another legendary match that we are expecting in a week. Magnus Carlsen will face Hans Niemann in well, what can only be the another match of the century. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Robert Stadelman, Oris the Great Dane who loves chess, Andrei Schade, Robert Paladek, and gersnichessfestival.org.gg for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of Fabi's legendary run in the Sinquefield Cup of 2014, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And sorry for a bit of a longer intro in this one. Second game, you know, only moves. See you soon.